I went with another ministry about 3 years in a row and really kind of fell in love with some of the people that I had gotten to know that were our interpreters and ones we worked with over and over. From that, the third year I was there, I went to bed one night and I just prayed and said, God, how can I help? Because there's so much need. And you know, a handout's not really help because they have to have more. So I went to bed praying that prayer. The next morning, after breakfast, my friend Fidel, who was one of our interpreters, asked me, do you have apples in America? And I said, yes. And he said, well, what kind? And you know, we have so many different kinds. I couldn't even name them. So I just said, I don't know, Fidel, we have so many. And his eyes just got as big as saucers. And he said, so you have all those apples? And I knew immediately that was the answer to my prayer without even a thought. And so I told him, I'm going to find a way. I'm going to find a way to bring apples here. I didn't know how, but I was determined to find a way. Obviously, Fidel was ecstatic. And every day after I told him I'm going to find a way, he'd grab my hands and say, don't forget my apples. And so for 2 weeks before I went back home, he was, don't forget my apples. When we came back to get the permits, we got every kind of, no, that won't work, to what? Because they don't even have a word in Rwandan, in Kinyarwandan for apple. They use the French word, pomme. And so they weren't sure what we were talking about because I didn't know the French word at the time. So we've gotten just about every kind of response. But once some of them understood what we were going to do, they were excited about the possibilities. You don't just plant them like here. You can plant the tree. You can go to the nursery, buy the tree, and plant it in your yard. Within 7 to 10 years, you'll have apples on that tree if you buy a seedling. The tree won't necessarily produce apples because they don't ever drop their leaves. Like we have definite changes of seasons here with the winter, the fall and the winter. All of our leaves drop unless they're an evergreen. Well, then in the spring, before the leaves come, they bloom, and the blooms are the apples. So there's no spring. It's rainy and dry seasons. So you don't ever get the dropping of all of the leaves. So there you have to force the tree to think it's been in a dormant season by stripping all the leaves off. And then it will think it's been dormant and it will bloom and start to produce apples. The trees, the first night we had the first orchard in the ground, there were 5 trees stolen because it's the goose that laid the golden egg. So they come and take the trees. Well, after the trees get established and you can't steal them, they'll steal the apples. So there has to be a guard, which is wonderful because that puts somebody to work. Then after that, paying people to strip the leaves, and then paying people to help harvest, and then paying a driver and hiring a truck to take them to market. So it provides a lot of jobs. But in all of that, the apples themselves will provide income for the orphans so that their schooling can be paid for, their uniforms, their books, their food, their clothing. And so it breaks that cycle of poverty that they have if they don't have any other way. Yes, I've had people call me Sharon Appleseed, which I'm honored that I get to continue some of the work that Johnny Appleseed started, because some of the trees, my understanding, some of the trees that we've actually grafted from could be some of the trees that Johnny Appleseed actually planted in California. So it's kind of exciting to think that somebody who's long gone, his work can continue, and those trees can be so old and live to make more trees. Just the smile they have. They're so excited that they get to be a part of something that will actually help them. They see that hope for a future.